If someone you trust sets you up, you don't automatically assume that's my husband, right?
Let's talk about body count.
Keep knowing yourself, and that requires patience, especially as your age goes up. It's the easiest thing to be like, it's taking too long, but you cannot short circuit actually knowing yourself.
Let go. Hey, Edified Tribe. Thank you guys for tuning in to Edified Minds Podcast, where I discuss issues that young Black women face regarding relationships, confidence, and accountability. I do this by incorporating God's standards, teaching you to unlearn toxic social media culture, and discussing Black culture debacles. So today I have a special guest with me to kick off our relationship series. I told you ladies about that last week, and I've been following her on social media for Christian dating advice and tips. And I want to welcome Lauren. How are you, Lauren?
I'm well, thank you, Kennedy. Good to see you.
Awesome. I want the guests to know who you are. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then what got you started into doing Christian dating advice and coaching.
Sure. As Kennedy said, my name is Lauren Mathues, and I am living outside of Chicago. I am a wife and a mom. I'm a believer, and I am really dedicated to my church. I teach the Bible there, and am involved in ministry. And I'm also a dating and relationship coach for Christian single people. And the reason I'm a dating and relationship coach is kind of twofold. My life took a turn during a family tragedy that created some space for me to reevaluate how I'm giving my time. And I got a chance to choose more directly what I wanted to give my time to. But in a lot of ways, I'm a Christian dating and relationship coach because of my story. I was single longer than I thought I was going to be. Mm-hmm. I was doing everything I thought I needed to do to be picked by that awesome man, right? I was ready for my Boaz, and he was nowhere on the horizon. And it sent me on this journey of thinking about not just what does God want? What does God mean when he wants to write my love story? What does it mean to let God lead? But also, how has the way our world has shifted, and how technology's impacted us, how education and all the other social mores have impacted how Christians are forming kingdom families. Mm-hmm. And in that, I discovered some fears in myself, some societal pressures, and was able to kind of detangle misinformation from how I was seeking God and his leading. And that led me in my case to meeting a really great guy and being able to connect and form a kingdom family. So that's why I do what I do, because it was me. It was me, and I had to figure some stuff out. And now I love being able to help people remember it's not you, it's dating. Dating is different, and there are ways to date effectively in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, we have to get used to saying that, right? 2024, because yes. I love how vulnerable you got just there when you were telling us, you've been through probably what a lot of us are going through with wondering, what's wrong with me? Why am I single for this long? And especially with society pushing certain things on women, especially in our 20s, to rush God's plan. It can be very frustrating. At the end of the day, your goal is to have people have kingdom relationships, because we see so many different relationships that I think are idolized, and we don't know the backstory of them, and we don't know really what it took to get there. Mm-hmm. So I've been online all day, actually, just doing my research, and I see that there are a lot of relationship coaches and gurus. But from your experience, what would you say is the big difference between Christian dating and modern dating?
That's a good question. I mean, in some respects, the answer is the same difference between a Christian accountant and an unchristian accountant, or a Christian doctor and a non-Christian doctor. When God calls us out and sets us apart as his people, it touches every area of our lives. And I think, Kennedy, you're highlighting part of the problem. There hasn't been enough distinctive
Mm.
for how we're going about forming kingdom relationships. But I think what should be part of that are things like, and I'm not trying to be too churchy, but it's things like the fruit of the spirit. Can you imagine going to church, noticing an attractive young man, connecting him with him over a date, right? He asks you out,
Yeah.
but you both decide mutually, this isn't a love connection. And then there's no drama. There's no gossip. There's no factions after the fact. Part of what needs to be distinctive about Christian dating is that we allow each other to actually date, that we
Mm.
don't put so much pressure on these early interactions and call for commitment when it's way too soon to know if you want to commit, that we vilify the process of dating and the people involved, as opposed to saying, let these people get to know each other and discern over time through experience, um, if they want to keep getting to know each other in this way. But then you have the litany of people who are not walking walking out their faith. They
Right.
are dating like the world. They're using people for their bodies, for their cash, for any number of things,
Yeah.
and not coming to this from from a place of who's aligned with me in my kingdom purpose. With whom could I walk down this road of life and be a testimony of God's grace and move mountains for the kingdom together?
Yeah. Well, I think the big problem I would say with dating in general is just the lack of wanting to get to know the resources. I've got
Mm.
girlfriends and I've got some who are married and some who've got kids and some who are single. And what I come across is that it's all about what you're wanting to learn. And so if you're having that block up and that wall up when it comes to discerning, you don't really want to learn about that person. You want to rush, you want to date quickly. And I find that those results are fairly, like you said, it ends in drama. It doesn't end in peace because you start to blame that other person that it didn't work out. And as I look back at my dating journey, I realized that the more I slowed down, those are the relationships that, even though they may have not worked out, I left with peace. And I didn't leave with blaming the other party or even blaming myself, but instead I had an understanding of, okay, it didn't work out and we can move forward gracefully. And I know growing up, I wasn't really taught how to date. That wasn't really my thing. So how was your dating experience growing up, and what were you taught? What kind of made you shift? Did you ever date worldly at one point, unknowingly or knowingly, and what made you shift?
What a great question. Yeah, I think it's interesting, especially as Christians in my age range and a little below, we have this beautiful movement called purity culture that impacted so many aspects of how we date. And so it's true. We say nobody taught me to date. But as I investigate secular resources in dating and hear other people and their perspectives that don't espouse my faith, they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
They too are saying, my parents never said, hey, what do you do when you like somebody? What do you do when you want to get to know somebody better? So that aside, my parents were older parents in their generation, so their whole MO for teaching me and my sister to date was just don't. Don't look at boys. Don't talk to boys. Why are you trying to talk to boys? Leave boys alone. Don't let boys talk to you. Definitely don't let boys touch you. Just don't.
Thank you. I think a lot of Black women can also say that too. And that's a whole different conversation. But
Mhm.
thank you. Lauren, I was taught leave the boys alone. And then I get older and now it's you need a husband. But all I was
Why aren't
taught
you
was to
married?
stay away from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there's this conflict between, and I'm not mad at parents, right? Our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles were trying to keep us from making mistakes that would cost, right? They wanted us to get ahead educationally, get ahead professionally, to be able to make a good life for ourselves, and have an easier life. They wanted that, but we don't. From this vantage point, I just say, like, we don't have to vilify sex and marriage. We can trust that we
Right.
can be focused and not be so distracted by, I don't know if it's just they were thinking about sex or if family's going to get in the way, but we can do both. grow in our kingdom purpose and calling and get married. From my parents, don't. And from church, there was all the trappings of purity culture. So lots of vilifying sexual desire, shaming attraction, and equating attraction with lust.
Mm,
So we can't notice who's attractive because that's lusting, which really cuts you off from like, what do you like? I mean,
right.
attraction is beautiful and God given and a helpful guide for who do I want to give my attention to.
Mm,
Um, there's a lot of separating the genders and like keeping us away from each other, and a lot of talk about waiting,
mm,
which for an older child, like an oldest in my family and a rule follower, man, if you tell me my job is to wait, I'm good at that. Like, but what it ended up doing, Kennedy, was like making me remove my own responsibility in the process from the equation. I'm waiting on God, so I don't have to leave my house. I'm waiting on God, so I don't have to talk to strangers. I can't do any of those things because I'm waiting on God. It really left me with that kind of mindset. If I'm
mm,
waiting on God, I'm not doing anything else.
mm.
He's going to bring me a person out of nowhere.
I think that's contradicting because I do believe that while God, of course, wants us to be pure and He doesn't want for us to be over lustful and He doesn't want for us to look in the wrong places for a partner, that how are we going to find our partner if we don't step out, and we don't go out and we don't follow His plan? I think that He wants for us mostly to follow His plan so that we can then stumble across the person that is meant for us,
Hmm.
because if we're being obedient to Him, and I'm finding this out through my personal journey. If I'm being obedient, then I'm able to open up new doors for discovery. And because of how things were implanted in my mind when I was younger, I think I moved on fear a bit, which caused me to be single longer than I probably should have. And then it
Hmm.
even caused me to kind of like the wrong guys because I was like, ooh, they saying stay away from him. What's wrong with him? Let me find out what's going on over there.
Hmm.
And as I'm in my single season though, I'm taking advantage by really dating God first. My relationship with Him has gotten stronger in the process. But there are some days where I'll be honest, I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel as great as I thought it would. And what would your advice be to the single women who do aspire to date properly and be married, but right now they're in their single season? It's kind of easy to be bitter or compare. So, what would you say for those women in their single season to
Yeah.
prepare for that day?
If the question is about preparation, I think the number one thing you could do is to keep honing that ear to listen to the Lord, because I think sometimes we're we're scared of moving forward, and it's the easiest thing in the world. And this isn't everybody, but it's the easiest thing in the world to say, well, I think God is telling me to just shut it down, to not step out, to not engage with the normal process of dating. They're using the word single season, but they're not meaning I'm just single right now. They mean I'm just shutting it down. I'm not going to put any effort into this. And so I think number one, listen to him. He loves you. This desire for a married existence is not for no reason, it's on purpose. So keep your ear tuned to him
Mm,
for when he's asking you to step out or respond with a yes to an invitation. I think another thing would be notice in yourself if it is fear. Scripture has no more frequent command than don't be afraid, which
mhm.
isn't to say we have to disregard our bodies' really beautiful wiring to help us know when we're in danger. No, we're not ignoring our bodies, but that God is constantly telling us, don't be afraid, says something about fear. So if in these times of opportunity we notice, I'm terrified, we need to take that straight to Jesus. We need to take that to the Holy Spirit and ask him, will you parse out for me? Am I am I in danger or am I just afraid? And help me be bold. Help me to confront those things that are keeping me afraid. We
Yeah.
also need to be applying ourselves to wisdom. We need to be asking and seeking wisdom from God's word, from other resources, to understand, who am I? What do I want in this life? What is my sense of my call and my purpose? Who could I discern? What kind of person would be a good match for what I see God already doing in my life?
Yeah.
And how can I be more open to that. I like to say to my clients, how do I put myself in the way of the love that I'm looking for?
Yeah. I like that, in the way, not out the way, but in the I love that. I do. Because it's real. Like, I feel like the enemy is trying to use a lot of fear tactics on people, and especially through social media, which is a big topic I talk about on my
Mhm.
podcast. It is, I believe the enemy is working overtime. I see a lot of positive content, even for example, you put it out there, positive content to help. But I
Sure.
think that sometimes people get blinded by what can't go right and the fears of dating. And it's led me to a conversation of, do you feel like people are called to singleness, or is that a form of fear?
People can definitely be called to singleness. God is able to say, my child, for whatever reason, I'm calling you into this. There's so much fear mongering advice on the internet,
Yeah.
right? Especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Here are all the things you need to do to keep yourself safe if you go on a date. You need to have a safe word and call your friend and have a text patch and don't let him pick you up. And I'm all for safety rules. Like, be safe in your dating, of course, but that can lead to this fear fearful like umbrella
Yeah.
that's over the entire experience, instead of the fact that God says we don't have to have a spirit of fear. He hasn't given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
he invites us into having our wits about us. I think this comes up in another way of like, if you've been in a relationship and things have gone south, if you've been hurt in a relationship, it's the easiest thing in the world to view every other person through the lens of the person that hurt you.
Yeah.
So we have to, as Christians, we have to fight that fear, not just trust everybody, right? No, everybody's not starting from zero. But
Right.
when the person we're interacting with right now gives us that, oh no, feeling, we have to take that to the Lord and say, is this so and so, or is this the person in front of me? Is that
Right.
old guy, or is this a caution about this guy?
Yeah.
And do the work of saying, what are the facts? What do I know about this person? Does he deserve my caution right now, or am I getting an opportunity to work out something else? Is a new neural pathway being made so that I can tell a new story, because everybody isn't that guy?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I've too many times have not listened to God though about guys. And so I
Mm.
have to decipher whether that is fear or whether that is God. And I think that God continues to knock on your door when he wants you to hear him. You know, he gives you like no way out, where he's like, look, this is what it is. Listen, or you're going to have to end up going on this journey and meet me somewhere else. Because in
Mhm.
dating, I've realized that in college, I did not date God's way at all. And
Mhm.
I find that a lot of my girlfriends, they're still in that boat where they're trying to decipher what is the right way to date, especially when on social media or even by gurus, relationship gurus, they're saying that women are supposed to be submissive, and if you hold back on sex for too long, you're probably gonna miss the man of your dreams. And oh, there's high value men and da 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 da. So many things that we can go back and forth on. But I love how you point to the fact of discernment's key. Like, that's what I'm praying on during my single season right now, is discernment, so that I don't have to keep questioning whether it's God. I will know it's God, because once you have that relationship with him, I feel like you start to kind of know, like you kind of know, like, okay, this is God plus my intuition. So this is just like double whammy, you know? And we're gonna real quick go to a topic that is just super random, but I saw you post about it. Body count. Let's
Okay.
talk about body count. Since we're speaking more from a
Mhm.
Christian dating realm, does it matter, your future spouse's body count? When you think of soul ties, when you think of all the things that go on, especially in women, how we are receiving energy, and how how demons are. Demons, they come, I think, one, and then even if you cast them out, they come with a whole squad next time. It's very deep.
Mhm.
How important do you think it is to consider your future spouse's body count?
I think that body count matters. I don't think body count is the only thing that matters. So if I'm evaluating my spouse, my future spouse, guy that I'm really into, and I stop at number of people, but I don't say, when were these relationships?
Hmm.
Were these one night stands, or were these in Were these in the context of a committed relationship? Again, doesn't make it not sin if they're not married, but does speak to this person's idea of where does sex belong in a relationship as it aligns with God's word. Was this person in the faith when they were sleeping with these people, or were they not yet a Christian?
Right.
Um,
It matters,
it does matter.
you
If
know?
if I believe if I have submitted myself to the lordship of Jesus Christ and have been using my body all type of out of God's written prescribed way, that's different than I didn't even know Jesus. I was just doing what we were doing. That's different. I think another important component that doesn't even touch on body count is the broader topic of sexual integrity, which
Mhm.
includes, what am I doing with pornography? What am I doing with illicit messages with people that never touch my body, but are communicating something about how I view sex in terms of a relationship? There are lots of ways to not have sex with somebody and be very and lack sexual integrity. So I'm
Mm,
not saying the count doesn't matter. I'm saying it's not the only thing that matters. And as a Christian tries to discern this, as you're learning other things about a person, the sex part is going to be one other thing that is a part of a bigger picture that's going to be in or out of alignment with what you're looking for in a
yeah.
person, right? Things are going to come into alignment is the point I'm trying to say. And like sex is one area in which you get a picture for how does this person view God? Where is scripture in
Mm,
this person's hierarchy of
yeah.
desire? Do they
Yeah.
put what God says over them, over what they want? Are they able to have the discipline to say no?
Mm,
And who is around this person? Who else is in this person's life that they've invited
right.
that's helping them in this pursuit of integrity? Um, our our Catholic people call it chastity, and I think that's a good word because it's not just for your single season. Chastity is a virtue that spans your marriage. Chastity is what keeps you faithful to your spouse
Mm,
when they're not able to give you sex or when there's disagreement or whatever. So this is something that's it's a big deal. It's more than just how many people did you used to sleep with. This is like, where do you put this in your life?
right.
Are you honoring God in this? Are you letting other people help you honor
Hmm.
God in this? So
Yeah.
I think of that first, Kennedy, before I think of the risks that are there that come with physically connecting yourself to another person and the spiritual and physiological connections and bonds that are made when you have sex with someone. That's important too.
Right.
It's not the only part of the story. There's a lot to consider.
And Christians cannot date the same as other people. I've been going back and forth with myself about how am I going to date from here on out. And it is just very clear that I cannot take modern dating advice because it will lead me down a path where I'm struggling with sexual sin because it's normalized on that realm. And I understand why God would tell us, be careful who you lay with. And that's why it's best to just do it with your spouse because there's so many other outside parameters that can really blur your mind.
Mhm.
I was looking at a TikTok and the girl was saying that, it's like when you sleep with somebody, you have a veil over your eyes. And so the more that you're trying to get to know that person, by that time you're blinded and the sex is what's taking precedence over everything else. What are three tips that you can give Christian women when it comes to dating? Like just your top three. If I'm new to dating or if I, want to start over in my dating, what are
Mhm.
three tips that I can do to date effectively as a woman of God?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing would be about self knowledge. Keep knowing yourself, and that requires patience, especially as your age goes up. It's the easiest thing to be like, it's taking too long, but you cannot short circuit actually knowing yourself.
Mm,
If you don't take the time to know, and I'm talking about simple things, right? What do I like to do in my free time? And honoring that. If you don't take the time to know yourself in every possible way, you're not going to know who's a good match. You will be in a situation where one component of the person is enough to hook you and then you ignore other parts, or you'll be chasing behind somebody just trying to get somebody, completely disregarding that you were knit together in your mother's womb on purpose. The things you like and don't like, your interests, your hobbies, your professional pursuits, your passion projects, all of that matters. So being really clear on what makes you you is a first important step. And the enemy is going to whisper and say, you're wasting time. So I just want to be another voice in your ear saying, this is the work. This is the best and first work. Knowing
Yeah.
yourself. I think from that, you're going to be able to be really clear on character qualities that are important to you. So I'm not talking about like the fruit of the spirit that all Christians are supposed to be growing in, but I'm talking about like adventurous or homebody. I'm talking about a desk job or I don't know, more blue collar work. Like you're going to be able to think about what kind of life am I walking toward and who fits that.
Right.
Think seriously, make a list, review the list, pray over the list, revisit the list of who you're looking for. The third thing I would say is be brave and go on dates.
That's the
I,
hardest part. It seems like that's the hardest part is when you're out of that dating pool, Lauren, you get once again, we don't operate in fear, but you see how I almost said you get afraid to jump back in. I mean, that's a real feeling where people they don't want to keep getting hurt over and over again. But I think that holding yourself accountable and like you said, working on yourself first will give you better results over time.
Let's talk about what can help with the fear, because you're highlighting an important truth. I'm talking about a big principle, but I don't in any way want to disregard. It is fear inducing. It's scary to get back on the app, to let somebody set you up, to go to a place where you know you're going to be approached and engage with someone. So what can you do? How can we think about that in a way that lightens the load? I think like lessens the pressure. One thing, and it sounds silly to talk to yourself, but repeat to yourself, I'm not promising this person anybody. I'm just getting to know someone. I like to define dating as the process of getting to know someone to determine if you want to keep getting to know them. If all I'm doing is getting to know someone, then I'm freer to say, well, what do you like to do in your spare time? And listen for an answer and notice how I'm responded to. I don't have to devolve to the superficial tests of like, well, did he text me good morning? If you like a lot of contact, that's fine. You get to like what you like, but you're going to be freer to not think that a good morning text means something. It's very easy. There are automated systems that could be sending thousands of good morning texts preloaded. He doesn't actually have to be sent. I'm not saying he's not sending you a text, but I'm just saying he doesn't have to be sending you a text.
Because all these guys going to start saying, let me send a little preloader up in here to all my women. No,
All
we're
my
not
ladies.
saying that.
Good morning, beautiful. No, he may be actually texting you, but what you really want to know is this the guy that like is intentionally pursuing me? Is he actually getting to know me? Is he letting me get to know him? So you don't get to learn those things reading books, listening to podcasts, no matter how awesome they are, chatting with your girlfriends. You build the skill of dating by dating. So with the Holy Spirit, with great confidence, find ways that you're comfortable meeting new people and do that without pressure on yourself to know something you can't know before you actually get to know someone.
What can go wrong? I think that's also the pressures of dating is taking things too seriously too fast. It's like, you're just getting to know this person. We could just start off as friends. And I've got a best friend who she says that's the first thing that she wants to do is be friends with her boyfriend. Like, don't rush into anything. It used to annoy the crap out of me because I'm like, what are you talking about being friends? And what if he's fine? But I get it now. It's like that takes off the pressure. And I believe that if you become friends first, you form an even stronger bond that's not rooted in lust and superficial things, but it's just genuine companionship, and compatibility. There are a lot of online debates regarding Black women finding love. And we spoke about that a bit. I'm convinced the enemy is attacking us because I feel like the enemy knows how strong we are. I feel like the enemy knows how powerful we are. And all women are powerful, don't get me wrong. But I mean, I'm an African-American woman in the South. And so I know my ancestors went through a whole lot of. How is it dating not only as a woman of God, but as a Black woman? And how can we block out the enemy's schemes? Because almost every day I'm just seeing a different podcaster or somebody else saying how Black women are and how we're this and how it's hard to marry us and hard to date us. And how can we also block out the enemy's schemes aside from just religion, but just he's trying to, I feel like, knock down personality traits and things of that nature as well?
How can we do it? Man, we have to combat our enemy with our faith and with facts. Okay? So faith tells us that Black women were not ignored when scripture says, I knit you together in your mother's womb. He didn't make us Black women on accident. It wasn't an oops. He, in his wisdom, in his largesse, said, I want this for you. This is how you're going to glorify me in the world and in the kingdom. So part of it is growing and asking God to help us be unabashedly who we are. I think another part of that is the allegations against Black women frequently, too passionate, too loud, etc., need to be held in balance with a humility before the Lord and our trusted community to say, where do I need to be checked? I'm not saying we need to hide our personalities by any stretch, but if there's a check, we need to let God check us. And if we let God check us, then there can be a confidence when somebody comes at us crazy and says, oh, you're just like, we can confidently say, that's not true, because I let my Heavenly Father check me when I need to be checked, and He doesn't check me on that. I get
Right.
to be this. The other thing, besides faith, is facts, right? And I think it's important to, as Black women, let ourselves notice all the men who are checking for us. There are myriad men who wish they could be with us. So I think part of what you're talking about, Kennedy, is a desire for Black women to be with Black men. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. But there's a confidence boost that comes when you let yourself notice, even though this group of people may not be checking for me right now, or in this group, the world glories in our beauty. Like,
Mhm.
there are myriad
Yeah.
Black and non-Black men that recognize the beauty and
Yeah.
recognize the glory and want to be near it. And that's that factually, when you think about like reports from organizations like Pew Research, or sometimes the Barna Group has good information just about racial dynamics and people getting married. Because I know the stats say we're least likely to get married. And then other pundits like to say things like we're not dateable, but that's just not true. It's
Right.
not true, because we are dating, we are getting married. And so I wonder if part of the enemy's ploy is to make us think that we're especially um like having an especially hard time.
Mm.
I'm not saying we don't have unique challenges, but I hear a lot of women across races saying
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard out here. It's not just us that's struggling, even though they try to make it seem like it's just us.
Right.
So I think part of it might be also like a social media fast. Stop
Yeah.
listening to the people that are only ever telling you you're not going to get this thing that you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I believe about God. That's not what I believe about how He puts desires in our hearts. I think it's for a reason, and I think He intends to fulfill it, and He'll make good even if it's not fulfilled. But man, I think it's for a reason that we want family and we want marriage, and
Yeah.
it's worth pursuing.
Yeah. Yeah, Black women definitely do set the trends now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I feel like in everything we do. And you're right. It's probably my algorithm, if I'm being quite honest. It's probably what I've already been scrolling on and it's just stuck on there. And so I've done my due diligence of starting the year off by unfollowing those pages that are just putting out negative notions that actually trigger me. But I love how you said that, just have that faith, like God did create us perfectly the way that we are, but there are areas for growth and improvement. And so God obviously wants us to always evolve and to listen and to have a like humble, being humble. I would say that when I was younger, I would always say, humble's the only way. Humble's the only way. I used to say it like, I wouldn't say it so humbly, actually, believe it or not. But yeah, humble's the only way. But I totally walk in that now, because I think that you can be confident, but also be humble before God and allow him to work in you and
Yeah.
allow him to make change in your life. Because Lord knows I used to have a mouth on me, especially with guys I dated, but I had to learn to, tone it down a bit in certain situations, or even just pray things through instead of getting so angry, because that is what the enemy wants.
Mm.
Is for us to get angry a lot of the times, and then end up spoiling our blessing that way. Both of our parents and a lot of people's parents told them, stay away from boys.
Mhm.
I have got some friends who are preachers' kids, and they said the same thing. As they were younger, they were told, stay away. Boys are a distraction. And as they got older, they realized that they kind of lacked certain cues in dating, especially if they were brought up in the church. So how can we show up authentically and get out of our own head when we're dating, if that's kind of like their background?
Yeah, if you're coming to an experience thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm behind on this. I don't have the proper information. It's going to be a constant insecurity. I remember working with a client once who, like, every other session we were talking about how she felt like there was some secret information that
Mm.
everybody else had that she didn't have access to. So she was constantly fearful, like, is it okay that I do this? Is it okay that I respond like this? Is it okay that I want these things? Because I don't feel like I know about dating. I think one thing is throw out the rule book, especially if we're out of college, like we're fully grown up people.
Yeah.
Throw out the rule book. The rule book becomes you, and think about, what do I want? A lot of us, we act like our other relationships are going to be categorically different than this romantic one. We act like other social scenarios are categorically different than the process of dating. But we know how to make and keep friends, I hope. And if we
Yeah.
know how to make and keep friends, then we know how to do the beginning part where you're kind of feeling people out and saying, do we have anything in common? Do we have enough in common? Do I like this person's vibe enough to keep hanging out? We don't, in our friendships, maybe it happens, but I suspect in our friendships, it's a little easier to say, well, I'm not saying I have to be her best friend. I'm just saying she's cool to get some appetizers with. Like, it's cool to do that, and we'll see how it goes. And then over time and over experience, we grow in friendship. That's the same thing that's happening in dating. So I guess what I'm trying to say is throw out the rule book,
Yeah.
because there isn't one. Figure out, what do you want? What are you comfortable with? And move forward with that, and know that your abilities in other social areas, which
Mm.
you have the evidence that you can win at, um, is going to benefit you. So there's not a secret rule that you have to do to get dating right. There are
Yeah.
a lot of assumptions being made about what's normal, but really what's normal is just what the two people interacting want. And
Right.
here's the best part. When you're comfortable communicating clearly, not just your boundaries, like stay away, but just like, oh, I don't feel comfortable with this yet. What makes you feel comfortable with it? When you're able to maturely converse about your differences, you're getting the best information about this other person. Do they make assumptions, or can they listen and negotiate? Even in a fifth date situation, right? We're not committed, but like, it's just date five, but they can still show up respectfully, can clearly communicate their perspective. That's golden information.
Speaking of weird ways to date, online dating is such, like, I've tried online dating,
Okay.
and Hinge was my favorite app. I didn't do well with Facebook dating. It was real kind of ghetto. I had guys with the goals and the T doing this and stuff, and I'm like, why are you even sliding around here?
Yeah.
But do you think that's a good strategy? Or is that kind of like a form of not trusting God, because you're putting yourself out there? And, a lot of people say, for women of God, let your husband find you. And how do you view online dating? In my eyes, also, I think it's kind of a little easier for wolves in sheep clothing to be online, and then you have to meet them in order to discern them. And you feel like you're wasting time because they may have been trash. So what's your view on online dating?
I think that online dating is an excellent tool in a multi tool strategy for connecting with like-minded people. And I think we have to approach online dating in the same way that we would approach being set up with someone.
Yeah.
If someone you trust sets you up, you don't automatically assume that's my husband, right? Like
Yeah.
outside of a really special word from God, you don't assume that. You say, okay, somebody who knows me said, I think you might like this person, but I'm still going with my eyes open.
Right.
I'm still doing my due diligence to get to know this person. I think, Kennedy, the best advice is show up fully from the beginning. Show up as your real self.
Yeah.
That's going to be the best evaluation tool for the other person. Because if you're saying what you really like, if you're laughing only at what you really think is funny, if you're not trying to impress him or get him or play any kind of game, his response to you is going to be all that you need to know. But this requires that we don't take that personally. I
Right.
can't act like somebody who on an app who didn't like me back enough to go on a date, like, can say something about who I am
Right.
and what my value is. They don't know enough to be able to make an assessment of your value.
Right.
If their leaving could even mean anything about you in the first place. So it's hard. It takes a lot of internal discipline. It takes a lot of strength to remember this is just part of the process. And these people's assessment of me doesn't mean something about me. Because when I was online dating, it was the hardest thing in the world to not feel like a stranger's assessment of me was telling me gospel truth about myself. What did that really say? That says I'm not firm enough on the gospel truth about myself.
Right.
Which is why in the dating strategy part, the first thing I said was know you. Let God speak into and convince you of your glory. Let him
Yeah.
convince you of how wonderful you are. So you can just, not from a superior place, but just from a normal place, say, who are you? And do I want to get to know you?
We're gonna walk in our authority all 2024 and beyond. That's what I'm saying. For
Yes.
my sisters who are listening to this, I want for the biggest takeaway to be, like you said, know yourself, but also know what God has said about us. Because
Yes.
that's been something I've been constantly replaying in my mind every day as I do my Bible plans and my morning devotion. It's
Mm-hmm.
just remembering what God said about me. When I do date again, it may not be, I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but guess what? I'm the tea that God made. So I'm totally fine, you know? And,
Yes.
and that's the beautiful thing about just finding yourself throughout this love journey. You know, I think also in order to be the best partner possible, you have to know yourself, because that partner is not going to be able to do everything for you and give you happiness all the time. You know, they're going to go through their own things. So you're securing yourself is key.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Lauren, for being a guest. I want to ask you, do you have anything coming up in 2024? Let my ladies know how they can get in touch with you. What's in store? What can we expect from you?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Kennedy. This has been a delight. It's so good to talk to you. Um, like we said at the beginning, I'm a dating and relationship coach, and I host pretty regularly an event called the Christian Singles Dating Roadmap. It's a 2-day virtual event. It's free, and it's a time to think through, how am I thinking about dating? Is my mind right in my expectations of dating? And what's a plan I can put in place that can help me know every week, every day, I'm doing something to move myself forward, to put myself in the way of love, in a way that's comfortable for me, but in a way that says, God, I'm with you in this process. I'm your co-laborer in this love story that we're writing. So I'm going to be hosting one of those in the next couple of weeks, and it would be so fun if anybody who's listening wanted to join in. And if not this time, then maybe in February or March.
How can we also follow you, by the way?
Yeah, it's just my name, Lauren Mathues, spelled a little differently, Mathues, but it's just Lauren Mathues on Instagram, Facebook some, but mostly Instagram. If you follow me there, you won't miss any of my events or opportunities, or just a little bit of wisdom I'm trying to sprinkle in with everything else that's on the internet.
Awesome. Well, ladies, make sure that you give Lauren a follow. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we'll have another special guest, and make sure that you guys follow me on social media as well at Edified Minds podcast on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe as well, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.